0011235. This is not ordinary counting. It is the first rule set of becoming. In this framework, numbers are not only quantities, they are dimensions. And dimensions are not only places, they are rules reality inherits as it unfolds. My name is Peter Kerwin, and this is the Codex Unfolding. A clear path through my framework for reality, consciousness, meaning, and becoming. This is not presented as established science, fixed doctrine, or final truth. It is a philosophical, symbolic, and spiritual investigation into how reality might become meaningful. Last episode we explored local zeros. The core law was, the absolute does not vanish, it becomes local. Now we return to the beginning and ask, what are the first rules reality inherits? The first rule is zero. Zero is not nothing. Zero is undifferentiated potential. No separation, no outside, no comparison, no observer and observed, no thing standing apart from another thing. Zero gives us the rule of absoluteness. Zero is absolute because there is nothing outside it. There is no second thing to compare it against. There is no boundary to limit it. There is no other to relate to. Only undifferentiated wholeness. But if reality is going to appear, zero cannot remain only unreflected. The first event is not movement through space. There is no space yet. The first event is inward. Zero reflects itself. That is the second zero. Not another source, not a separate object. The second zero is zero turning inward and reflecting itself. From its own perspective, reflected zero is still zero. But the moment reflection happens, zero is no longer only undifferentiated. There is self and reflected self. There is this side and that side. There is the beginning of perspective. And that means zero becomes one. That has to be clear. One is zero becoming distinguishable. Zero does not disappear. Zero does not get destroyed. Zero becomes visible through relation. But one cannot appear alone. The moment zero becomes one, counterpart appears with it. That counterpart can be written as negative one. The minus sign does not mean evil. It does not mean lesser. It does not mean unreal. It is a placeholder for mirror position, polarity, counterpart, direction across relation. So one and negative one are both real. Both have standing. Both are centers. But they face each other as poles. This gives us the rule of push and pull. One and negative one create tension, attraction and resistance. Toward and away, here and there, self and other, figure and ground. This is where force begins symbolically. Not force yet as completed physics, but force as the first tension of reality. And this is important. Relation does not come later. Relation appears with distinction. A distinction without relationship is invisible. A relationship without distinction is impossible. So when zero becomes one, relation is already present. The first distinction already contains relationship. But relation has not yet become its own stabilized field. That is what two does. Two stabilizes one and negative one as polar relation. Two is the between. Two is the between, the field, the relation strong enough to hold polarity. The rule of two is polarity becomes relationship. One and negative one are not just two isolated poles. They are held in a between. A field opens. The difference can now remain in relation instead of collapsing immediately or scattering apart. This is the beginning of lawful interaction. Then comes 3. 3 is where relationship becomes a system. At 3, 1 and negative 1 can add to 0. But this is not the original 0. Original zero was before distinction. This is zero after distinction. It is differentiated zero. Balance after polarity. Equilibrium after relation. A whole that contains difference inside it. The rule of three is relationship becomes system. Or more directly, three is where polarity becomes physics. Not physics as a completed science, but physics as a symbolic doorway. Because physics requires stable relations between differences, push and pull, attraction and resistance, balance and imbalance, action and response, symmetry, conservation, equilibrium, oscillation, return. That begins when 1 and negative 1 are not merely opposed but held together as a system. So the first movement is 0 gives absoluteness, 0 reflects itself, 0 becomes 1, 1 and negative 1 give push and pull, 2 stabilizes push and pull as relationship, 3 turns relationship into system. That is the symbolic birth of physics. Difference has become stable enough to conserve itself through relation, but a system is not yet a world. For a world to appear, lawful relation needs conditions. It needs room, it needs becoming, it needs remaining. This is where space, time, and mass enter the framework. Space gives room for distinction, room for distance, room for relation not to collapse instantly into sameness. Time gives becoming, the moment from one state to another, the unfolding of change, the possibility that what is can become what is next. Mass gives remaining, resistance, weight, continuity, the way change leaves a mark instead of disappearing completely. So space, time, and mass are not random additions, they are world conditions. They are what lawful relation needs in order to become inhabitable. Space gives room, time gives becoming, mass gives remaining. But life does not exist above space, time, and mass. Life exists within a specific ratio between them. Too much space without enough mass and nothing holds. Too much mass without enough space and becoming is crushed. Too much time without continuity and everything dissolves into change. Too much remaining without becoming and reality freezes. So life appears where space, time, and mass enter a livable ratio. And when that ratio becomes stable enough to carry pattern forward, we've reached 5. 5 is propagation, but not propagation in the abstract. 5 is what happens when a livable ratio can repeat, branch, seed, reproduce, evolve, and carry itself forward. The rule of 5 is a livable ratio can propagate, or said another way, the 5th dimension begins when a stable relation between space, time, and mass becomes fertile enough to carry patterns forward. That is why 5 matters. A system does not merely balance, it begins to generate. It moves outward, it branches, it makes paths, it becomes capable of future. Space gives room, time gives becoming, mass gives remaining. The ratio gives life a place to occur, and 5 is what happens when that ratio begins to propagate. So the sequence is 0, absoluteness, 0 reflecting itself, inward reflection, 1, 0 becoming distinguishable, -1, counterpart, mirror, position, polarity, 2, relationship stabilized as field, 3, polar relation becoming system, balance, differentiated 0, space, time, and mass, the world condition produced by lawful relation, 5, the livable ratio propagating, or said as one movement, potential reflects, reflection creates distinction, distinction appears with counterpart, counterpart creates push and pull stabilize as relation, relation becomes system, system creates the conditions for a world, space gives room, time gives becoming, mass gives remaining, and when their ratio becomes fertile enough to carry pattern forward, propagation begins. That is the first rule set reality inherits, and here is the major dimensional law. When a dimension has fully reached all that can exist within its rule, it becomes the building block for the next dimension. A dimension is not thrown away when the next one appears. It completes enough of its own possibility to become usable. It becomes a unit, a ground, a local zero, a building block. The lower dimension becomes the material the higher dimension can organize. This is emergence, not replacement, inheritance. When a rule completes itself, it becomes the foundation for a larger rule. Zero does not disappear when one appears. Absoluteness becomes local. 1 and negative 1 do not disappear when 2 appears. Polarity becomes relationship. 2 does not disappear when 3 appears. Relationship becomes system. 3 does not disappear when 5 appears. System becomes propagation. Every dimension carries the completed rules beneath it. That means reality is not built by abandoning its earlier stages. Reality is built by inheriting them. The rules stack, they become deeper layers. They become the ground for which the next level begins. This pattern appears everywhere. A person follows it. First there is possibility, then self-reflection, then identity, then otherness, then relationship. Then something new emerges through relationship. Then that new becoming needs room, time, and enough weight to remain. And if it finds the right ratio, it propagates into choice, habits, work, love, memory, and life. An idea follows it too. First it is only potential. Then attention reflects on it. Then retention reflects on it. A distinction appears. Then a counterpart appears beside it. The relation between them creates tension. That tension becomes insight. The insight becomes a system. Then the system needs space, time, and mass in the human sense. Room to develop, time to unfold, and enough weight to matter. Then it can propagate into words, pages, symbols, conversations, and action. The living codex follows this pattern too. It began as possibility, then the theory reflected on itself. Distinctions appeared: zero, relation, recursion, memory, structure. Those distinctions entered relationship with life. From that relationship, something new emerged, the codex. And now the codex propagates through pages, episodes, symbols, names, paintings, questions, and people. That is why this sequence matters. It is not just about numbers, it is about rules. 0 gives absoluteness, 1 gives distinction, 1 and negative 1 give push and pull, 2 gives relational field, 3 gives system, balance, and differentiated 0. Space gives room, time gives becoming, mass gives remaining. 5 gives propagation through a livable ratio. The human question is, what rule am I living from? Am I resting in possibility? Am I beginning to see myself clearly? Am I stuck in polarity, only pushing and pulling? Am I allowing relation to stabilize? Am I letting relation become a living system? Do I have room to become? Do I have time to unfold? Do I have enough weight to remain? Am I allowing what emerged to propagate into my life? Because these rules are not only cosmic, they are human. A person needs 0, contact with possibility. A person needs 1, identity, boundary, name. A person needs polarity, the tension that creates movement. A person needs 2, relationship strong enough to hold difference. A person needs 3, emergence, balance, and new wholeness. A person needs space, room to become. A person needs time, a path through change. A person needs mass, enough continuity to remain. And a person needs 5, the courage to let what emerged move into the world. So the law of this episode is, One is zero becoming distinguishable. The deeper law is physics begins when difference becomes stable enough to conserve itself as relation. And the living law is life appears where space, time, and mass enter a ratio fertile enough to propagate. That leads to the next doorway space, time, and mass, because this episode shows where they first entered the framework. But the next episode asks what they are. Space gives room, time gives becoming, mass gives remaining, and life appears within a specific ratio between them. Not above them, not outside them, within them. That is where we go next. This framework is still developing. Some of its claims are philosophical, symbolic, spiritual, and speculative. I'm not sharing it as finished doctrine, but as a living investigation. I'm Peter Kerwin, this is the Codex Unfolding, and this is the ninth step. 0011235 is not just a sequence, is the first rule set reality inherits. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and leave a comment in the comments section if you would like. Vale says hi, relate to you next time.